Alrighty guys, welcome back, and I am not sufficiently caffeinated for this, but we're doing the Lyra Rembrandt Polycolor review today, and I have the Lyras here in Prussian Blue, Dark Carmine, and Light Chrome. I pick a blue, a red, and a yellow for my reviews now because those are the primary colors, and with those you can make just about any color you want. I'm comparing them to the Polychromos and the Prismacolors. So in the Polychromos I have the Helio Blue Reddish, Permanent Carmine, and Cadmium Yellow. And in Prismas I have Copenhagen Blue, Crimson Red, and Canary Yellow. Now, I tried to get them as close to matching as possible so that you could see the results the best. Starting here, I want to show you how one pass versus quite a few passes work with each of the pencils so that we can see the consistency as well as how well they layer and how many kind of passes it takes in order to get rid of any of the white spots on the paper. Now I'm using the Nina cardstock. It's 65 pound cardstock, 175 GSM, and that is my favorite cardstock to use and what I use for many of my colorings as well as my drawings. So here I'm just going to use very light colors or light passes in order to show you how many passes it takes with each of these to work at it and get all of the paper done and colored. And the Prismas, it only takes a few on the cardstock in order to do that. With Polychromos, always soft, always buttery, just like Prismacolors. Slightly harder point on polys, which is well known as they're oil-based, and Prismacolors are wax-based. The Lyra Polycolors are oil-based, but they have a very waxy feel to them. They are soft, but they are not quite as buttery in their laydown as Polychromos or Prismas. However, they do go down wonderfully. They are vibrant as far as I've been able to see, and they really don't take any more passes than the polys do in order to cover the paper and get rid of all the white spots. Now I want to do this separate showing with each of the colors so that you can really see each of the values, because yellow has a very, very light value, which means how dark it is. A red is a kind of a medium value, and then I have a darker one. The blue is what I chose for the darkest value here. So doing again, polys first, and I use a very, very light hand in all my coloring because I generally like Polychromos the best, and so I'm used to using a very light hand and multiple layers in order to build up the color and the vibrancy that I want. If you're used to Prismas and you don't use as many layers to build up vibrancy, that's great, and they're wonderful pencils for that. They're just not my favorite pencils, but they are good pencils. They are more prone to breakage because they do have a softer core than Polychromos do, but if that's your preference, go for it. Here you can see I didn't quite get the right color as far as Prismas and Polychromos, but I did try to match them all. So here you can see, and just going in and doing the middle of it and just going over it a few times, still using light to slightly medium pressure in order to get all of the white of the paper covered. Now, the cardstock I use has a little bit of tooth, which I really find is nice with colored pencils. It is not as smooth as, say, copy paper would be, and it has a good weight to it, so that's also something I like. Here, using the Lyras, you can see very, very light touch going over it, and then I'll be going in and coloring the middle and seeing how many passes it takes with this medium value in order to really get it nice and saturated with color. Now, what I noticed on these is that the tips on the Lyra actually wear down faster than the Polychromos. I do think that with the actual lead that they are a little bit softer as far as lead goes than the Polychromos, but not as soft as Prismacolors. I don't think that they will wear down as quickly as Prismacolors at all, but I do think they will wear down a little bit faster than Polychromos. Which is not a bad thing. That makes them a little bit easier to maybe blend or whatnot, as we will see. And here we're just going to do this again one more time with the blues. And these are Prussian blue for the Lyras, Helio blue reddish for the Polys, and Copenhagen blue for the Prismas. And blue's my favorite color for one, and I love all of these blues. They're wonderful. And I've been very surprised with how vibrant these are so far. Like, just comparable, completely comparable to Prismacolors as well as Polychromos. So I'm really enjoying that. As you can see here, these are the Polys again on the left, and then we'll do Prismas on the right, and then Lyras on the bottom. Looking at the reds, I think I got the Prismacolor one just a little bit off. I think it's a little bit darker than the other two, which is fine, since it is the only wax-based one. Prismacolor is very, very soft, very buttery, very smooth on the paper. For me, they just take a few extra passes to get them really as saturated and covering every single part of the paper than I would want to do. But that's completely fine as well. That's due to their softness. And it takes a little bit more pressure to get them to, and keeping their sharp point in order to get them to get into every single little curve and cranny of the paper. With the Lyras, like I said, they're not quite as soft as the Prismacolors or the Polychromos. They are a little bit scratchier, definitely, but not bad, honestly. I mean, I've used everything from praying pencils to Crayola and Crazy Art, and they're not cheap pencils for one. They are artist quality, and a couple of other things is, as you can see, I wrote down there are 72 in the set. However, only 70 of those are colored pencils. The other two are Splender Blenders, which I will use later on in the demo for you to see. They have a 4mm core, but the casing is actually thinner than, say, Polychromos. Now, I believe Polychromos also have a 4mm core. I could be wrong. Could be a 3.8. I'll have to check on that one. Okay, so down here, we're going to see how they blend with different materials. And we're going to go the full gauntlet of the color spectrum. We're going to start with blue and yellow and make green. And we're only going to use the pencils themselves to blend in this. Now, I've heard great things about the Lyra Polycolors as far as blending goes, but I'm really wanting to see this firsthand for myself. and just working my way across the page. Very, very light layers, and always multiple layers when you're blending, especially with just pencils. When I'm not using anything else, I always want to do multiple layers, very, very light hand, and let the pencils do the work for me. I don't burnish, which is, pushing really hard on the pencils in order to flatten the tooth of the paper and get a shiny surface. When I'm blending, that's not something I want to do. And there you have it, guys. I mean, that is just blending on its own. They make a fantastic green. Look at that. And you're even moving some of the blue pigment. That is lovely. Look at that. That is a great blend, y'all. Holy crap. Yep, no, I like these, definitely. This is not hard to do at all. I'm obviously not being super careful in how I do it. Just using light layers, and as you can see, I'm not even going in circles, which I should be for really good blending. That's what I'm used to doing with Polychromos. So that's a wonderful blend, as far as I'm concerned, to getting a really nice green. Moving on, let's do yellow and red to make an orange, and then we're going to use a solvent. I use with all of my color pencils. I use odorless mineral spirits. I don't use like one of the name brands. I don't use Mona Lisa odorless mineral spirits or Gamsol. I just used odorless mineral spirits that I got from Walmart. Like, that's all that they're called, and that's what I use. So do a couple layers of the colors that I know that there's enough pigment on there. I have my little pot, which has the odorless mineral spirits in it, soaked into a kitchen sponge so that I don't soak out my paper. I use a small paper stump. They're called tortillions or tortillions. I just said the same thing. Never mind. And then I dip it on there onto my sponge, and then I spread it out, and it works wonders. It's like magic, absolutely. This is fantastic. Like, they blend beautifully. Like, look how much I am moving the pigment around. I'm going to dip it in there, wipe it off a little bit to get some of the red pigment off of there so that I can use it on the yellow and just kind of move the yellow around a little bit. See how much I can pull it and move it a bit. What a solvent does is it dissolves the binders in there. I know it looks a little bit gray right there, but that's just because I hit the pencil at the edge of the circle. It dissolves, the odorless mineral spirits dissolves the binders and helps the pigment move around. So that's really wonderful. Giving it just a moment to dry, and you can definitely add more layers. But they didn't lose their vibrancy, which I really love, and you can add more layers of colors on top. Occasionally, when you'll find color pencils that when you use a solvent with them, their vibrancy will come down a little bit, and you'll have to reapply layers and then blend again and then reapply layers to get the saturation of color that you'd like. And I don't really see that here, which is pleasantly surprising. And last but not least, of course, I want to go back and forth and use their blender, the Splendor Blender pencil, and do red and blue, which, as we know, makes purple. The purples that you make with red and blue color pencils are always quite dark, unless you are adding something like white to the mix, and I am not. So it is very good, very dark, which is fine. And let me get out the Splendor Blender. which is made, of course, by Lyra and for these colored pencils. So I hope it works. I'm not a huge fan of blender pencils. Not even the Prismacolor blender pencil. I used to use it. It's cool. I'm just not a huge fan of it. You know, it's just my personal preference. There we have it. It seems to actually be kind of like gray almost, but I know that it's supposed to be clear, so here we go. It does a pretty good job. I'm not pressing hard, and it seems to really work well, honestly, for these pencils. But look at that. When you get on that single color, the blue, just, ooh, that's pretty. Go down here to the red, see if we get that same kind of slightly lighter color when going over the red. It seems to kind of almost gloss it up a bit, which is nice, I think. Gives a very interesting look to it. It's very nice. I kind of like that. Very pretty. Very, very, very good. Honestly, kind of surprised. But absolutely a pretty seamless blend there with the Splendor Blender. And I was just kind of wanting to see if that had burnished it. I wasn't using much pressure, but it has not, and I can actually add color and more layers on top of that, which is fantastic to know. You can add both red and blue. I'm adding more layers. Let's blend it again. Why not? That is a lovely blend, guys. So, there you have it. 3 ways to blend them by themselves, with odorless mineral spirits, and with their own Splendor Blender. And I think the overall rating is kind of a 4.5 on that. I mean, I think that I've seen better blends with some things, but okay, so maybe like a 5.5. I don't know. Always want to know about erasability, because Lord knows I make mistakes. So let's see how much I can really get off. I use a just a plastic white eraser, soft plastic that I can get from any art store. The white erasers, the big ones, are my favorite. And honestly, it's not a bad lift. Like, it really isn't. If you have one of those mechanical erasers, you may be able to get more. But I was pushing pretty hard with that erase. And that's